Napalm Death. Definitely one of the most influential bands coming from UK in extreme metal of all time. Not only being one of those grandfathers of grindcore, but also a formidable name in death metal. The band has been there out quite some while, almost 40 years by now. And what makes the band so interesting is that while they also have quite a lot of, say, haters, they are too much on the left, they're too much like your neighborhood dad, they're too much Antifa. They're also loved by so many who love grindcore, grind music, death grind. Well, the list goes on. And they have been active throughout the years, making no compromise, showing middle fingers both to musical industry, both to politicians, both to, I don't know, metal scene. Loved by many, hated by not so many, but still dividing opinion in so many ways. Now, about 16 albums out and quite a few other releases. I mean, there are dozens and dozens of MCDs, compilations, I don't know, splits, I guess. All kinds of releases. Napalm Death is one of the most active British extreme metal bands. And always killer on live, at least what I've seen. And, they have been paving the way with so many styles. Starting with the kind of a punk meets hardcore meets grind meets metal. And then progressing towards kind of a darker death metal, coming back to grind, then adding some groovy elements, and, bouncing in all places. Now it seems the band has once again created a new chapter for themselves. And unfortunately, that doesn't really go without problems. Now, this is a Throes of Joie in the Jaws of Defeatism. Well, quite a title, to be honest. Let's do a little bit of unboxing for this CD while I'll tell you a little bit of the release and show you the contents. That is, if I'm able to get this baby out without just damaging the goods within so much. As you notice, these days so many albums have these annoying pieces of plastic which kind of create this sort of a hindrance taking that booklet out, as if the albums are not meant to be reading, and as such I'm using this minor miniature sized knife to remove the elements without twisting the paper too much, but unfortunately even that is sometimes very, very hard. So here it is. Quite many songs listed here. Some 45 minutes, give or take, as an album. And once again, a cover that is, I don't know, taking a sort of commentary. Dead bird with its glove, some blood sprayed all open. I don't know. Napalm Death always been very, very political. And I think it's really, really nice that they have been doing their stuff very openly. Not taking a step back, but just, stating their ways in so many ways. And obviously that is always some kind of a thing to divide these opinions. But nothing wrong with being divided by different opinions. Actually, I think it's better to be a band that is, like I guess Kurt Cobain said it, better to be hated for who I am than be loved for who I am not. So being honest, being truthful, being what you are is the most important thing in life in so many places, so many situations. So really can't be angry about the band or at the band because, what they are and what they say, what kind of music they make. So lots of pages on this booklet, lots of lyrics to give you a little bit of a thinking job to do. Now let's take a look at the metal oxide before this video becomes some 20 minutes of a thing. As you can see, Napalm Death. Let's start scrolling. Quite a few of these releases before we get into the end, which is here. So it's been 5 years since the band's latest album, or latest one before this one, called Apex Predator Easy Meat. So if we just get a little bit back, you will notice that early on the band was way more quickly to create these albums. 87, 88, 90, 92, so forth. So the pace has been slowing down towards the end we go. One can only guess. It must have something to do with the age. Probably so. But also because, well, if you take a look at this members list, Shane Embury, one of the key elements of the whole band, one could say the band member. I mean, he's doing bass, but he also has lots of other bands. He has bands like Brujeria, he has Insidious Disease, also the album out, Lock Up, Venomous Concept, also an album out, and so forth. So there's lots of bands he had been keeping busy with. Mitch Harris also has his other bands, and obviously Danny Herrera with Venomous Concept and so forth. So all these guys are kept busy. But Shane Embury even more so because, you know, being the kind of a mastermind behind the riffs and so forth. He's a nice chap, by the way. Met him at Wacken Festival a few years ago. Too bad I didn't have Rauta back then, or otherwise I probably would have a cool interview with him. Anyway, seen Napalm Death on stage. Heard quite a few of their albums. Not all, I guess. Not sure. And gotta say, Napalm Death has been going up and down throughout the years. And it depends on the particular individual to say which part of the band, which phase of the band is the best one. Some would say, I guess, early grindcore. Some would say death metal, maybe me. And some would say their later stuff because, you know, the band has been progressing, evolving, changing, taking different stands along the ways and so forth. But what makes this album interesting and also a little bit of a disappointment is that the band has changed once again. Now, it definitely has some very powerful, grindy parts. It starts actually with one of the best tracks on the album, which gives you a little bit of a promise that now we're gonna punch some faces, we're gonna make those statements, we're gonna be angry and aggressive and violent and all that stuff. So Fuck the Factoid with 2 minutes 27 seconds or so is one of the tracks which kind of promise you way too much. Because towards the end we go, I don't know, but to me it feels like the band is going on decline, especially with this one. For example, A Bellyful of Salt and Spleen, probably the weakest track on the album because it doesn't really feel and sound like Napalm Death. It's just too different. It's not a track you're supposed to expect from a band such as Napalm Death. Now, throughout the course of the album goes a bit like up and down, up and down. It's like a bumpy, rocky road where you just sometimes feel kind of nauseated because it's not what you signed up for. Sometimes you're like, hey, okay, the band is now on business. We're now driving the asphalt road. The ride is steady and I'm feeling fine until you once again head off-road and you get that bumpy road effect and you're like burping a little bit. And in my opinion, there is so many little faults which make this album quite divided in my opinion. It's not bad, it's not even mediocre, it's definitely better, it's a decent album. But there are those parts which, you know, feel like you're going from these mediocre parts to these good stuff. And a lot of things going on between these two extremities. So once again, from mediocre to good, from good to mediocre, and lots of parts that are somewhere between these two parts, these two ends, which in my opinion makes this album as an overall result quite decent. So once again, not mediocre, but not worth a cigar. Also, what I could say about the production is that you don't have to worry about being overproduced or anything like that, because to be honest, this doesn't sound too strong. And I also think that is one of the weak points on this album. It's not a bad thing, but it's kind of a disappointment. You would expect a stronger output by a band with this experience and all. So, I don't know, there is something a little bit off on this album. It's not about Barney's vocals, because I think they're just as good as ever. And it's not about the vision that the band clearly has, because, you know, Napalm Death is what Napalm Death does, and I think it's just good that they experiment a lot. But this time, in my opinion, they have gone too far off-road. Maybe some fans will be totally happy about it and cool about it, but me, personally, a little bit of a disappointment. So given that this album already has like an 86% based on 3 reviews, well, it seems like some fans definitely like this a lot. For me, more like 7 out of 10 would be a proper review score if I was to give on scores on Rauta, which I guess I just did. Anyway, an album worth listening to, most definitely, but just don't expect too much based on songs like Fuck the Factoid. So, interesting, but still quite of a disappointment. I was expecting more like an 8. But, like the saying goes, people are only disappointed in their own expectations, not the reality of things. With these words said, go take a listen on Napalm at your favorite streaming service or buy an album. The band doesn't have this album on their Bandcamp site, at least for the moment when I was checking out. Some older material, sure, but if you want to listen to this one, go for the stream or go to a record store and do it old-fashioned, headphones on. And what can I say? I hope you enjoyed more than I could. This is Cherry from Rauta. Take care.